I mean, how have the last 30 days been for you? Do you find, are you having highs and lows? Do you find that, sometimes you're getting demonized by people and sometimes you're super optimistic? Or I'm just curious, how's your life been?
Yeah, I feel a bit tossed around, by the ups and downs emotionally and all of that. Like I said, I have a deep sense of heartbreak for humanity right now and our misunderstanding of what's going on. I have a deep degree of heartbreak for the healthcare industry that has really rocked me at moments. I have real crisis of hope for humanity, just seeing how slow things are to change. But then at the same time, George Floyd's murder is somehow buried in this hope for me of here is the witness of one death. And we see, people are killed every day in domestic violence and police violence and everything else by the tens of thousands. It's just, there's so much death and dying on the surface of the planet. But for some reason, there was a moment of consciousness as a world that when we witnessed this 8 minutes of death, we all got to see a hospice moment there. You got to see a death. And 5 minutes into that death, he calls for his mother. And in my experience at the hospice bed, he was having a conversation with his mother for those last 3 minutes that we didn't get to hear. His mother was with him. I'm very confident maternal energy is an eternal thing, I think. And there's no way that her soul in a vast universe of energy could have not heard her son's cry at that moment. And I'm very confident that while the rest of us failed to rush to his side, she showed up. And in that reality that we can't see, on the other side of that veil, is a story of reconciliation that we are feeling inside of us now. We don't understand why we have new hope about hundreds of years of suppression of Black people all over the world, enslaved in all sorts of empires before us. Why are we feeling this new hope? It's because we got to witness a mother showing up.
That's a powerful observation. I think there really is something to think about that. And I think maybe people don't even know what they witnessed, but they know they witnessed something important and special there. And then we're seeing the reaction.
Very, very blessed and humbling gift to be witness to a transition of death. The world had a very sacred role in being witness to that man's death. And we don't understand it because we haven't been explained it. There is no memo that's put out. There is no media burst on how to come into a sacred space of death and dying appropriately, what emotions you're going to experience, what spiritually aligns within you. You don't know what has happened, but within that witness of that 8 minutes, and I would encourage anybody who hasn't seen it to watch it so that with a new mind. And if you've watched it before with horror, watch it now with a sacred mind and watch a mother enter the scene and see if you can't feel the moment that mother enters that scene and the peace that might come upon him and the change of the attitude of the peoples and everything else. Somebody was filming that, and in filming that, they had the peace to continue. And instead of running or instead of picking up rocks and throwing with the police, they had this preternatural peace to continue to shoot this scene and to leave an uninterrupted documentation of this experience. And we've seen so many interrupted, segmented little pieces of police brutality and shootings and everything else. There was a peace in that environment that was inexplicable. And I think that it has to do with the moment of reconciliation and healing at a deep, deep soul level of this species now, as we start to understand that suppression of any one of us is a suppression of our own collective consciousness. And when somebody says Black Lives Matters, we're obviously speaking to life matters and oppression of anything. Whatever we've done to the African American in the United States pales in comparison to what we've done to our native peoples. The First Nation peoples here in the United States and our native tribes and nations that are still with us today are so further abused, so more neglected, and so more under a systematic and systemic corrupt system than even our African Americans are. And so life matters, and we're not going to know that until we come into these sacred moments of death. And as a population, I hope that we just got witness to death in a different way. The few 100,000 people that died around the world from COVID pales in comparison to the 1.8 million people that will die this year just from lung cancer. Just lung cancer, 1.8 million. And so there's so many more people dying than of COVID. You know, COVID is a tiny little piece of death on the planet. And yet, just as George Floyd, as one instance, focused our attention, it changed our consciousness. And so my deep hope is that this pandemic was a first global meditation on the state of affairs of human health and its cross-section with environmental health. And in that meditation, in that collective focus, we can finally change our behavior against Mother Nature. And we can end global warming and our climate change crisis by the same mentality and the same practices that would bring our health into realignment.